Three, two, one. Hello there. Thank you for listening to episode 19 of Hello There Star Wars podcast. As always, I'm Anthony Palm, joined by Nate Hicks. And this week, as we mentioned last week, we're going to be talking about how we believe the prequels will tie into The Rise of Skywalker, which is, of course, episode 9 due out this December 2019. Yeah, let's get into it, Nate. So we're coming off a couple weeks ago. We did our Phantom Menace commentary track, which we are going to plan on doing all of the saga movies leading up to episode 9. No official date on when we're going to do Attack of the Clones yet, but hopefully soon. But yeah, so do you want to start this off? You want me to start it off? Do you have any kind of thoughts on where we can go? It doesn't have to obviously stick to just Phantom Menace, but just, I figure coming off of that commentary, that one is fresh in our mind, but there are, a ton of other things from episodes 2 and 3 that may tie in as well.
I started off last week, went real heavy into Galaxy's Edge, so I'm gonna let you take the reins on this one.
All right, so the biggest, not issues that I had with episodes 7 and 8, but I don't know how to word it. I think the biggest kind of misstep is the lack of references to past Star Wars movies in episodes 7 and 8. Of course, it's the whole like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, like they mentioned like those key people, and of course you got to do that. But they didn't. There was no reference to the Clone Wars. I mean, there was the one kind of offhanded like, "What if we get clones instead?" When
that was more.
Kylo says to Hux.
That was more acknowledgement than anything. I was just acknowledging the prequels existed, basically.
Right, but it's not. There was no real kind of consequence.
Yeah,
the Clone Wars and the
Galactic Civil War.
Right, neither of those really played into the story. They're just kind of things that had happened previously. Aside from, I guess on Jakku you have the fallen AT-AT, and you have the giant Star Destroyer, but they're kind of just there for flavor. They don't tie in. There's environmental storytelling, I guess, on Jakku, but especially episode 8. There really wasn't that much that tied in with the prequels or the original trilogy, really.
Yeah, it's the model of just skipping ahead, like getting past the origin story and just like starting, which I think works especially with revisions of comic book movies. But you're right, Star Wars in particular, the thing that which you're bringing up, the thing that's getting me a little bit is, as much as I am excited about what the Clone Wars and what the prequel trilogy will do for The Rise of Skywalker, it seems jarring almost because
it's like disconnected.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the biggest issue I have with episodes, less so episode 7 than episode 8. It's more so episode 8. But they just feel disconnected from episodes 1 through 6. Like, even though episodes 1 through 3 are tonally way different and visually, of course, way different than the original trilogy, they still have that that kind of through line, you know what I mean? Whereas with 7 and 8, and again, less so, 7 does have, a lot of nods.
It feels like Star Wars, like
right. But I just feel like episode 8, there was so many opportunities to tie. It could have been so easy to tie in the prequels. When Rey is visiting Luke on Ahch-To, like when he's literally in like a Jedi chamber with a giant Jedi symbol on the ground, and there's no conversation about he brings up how like the Jedi at the height of their power allowed Darth Sidious to rise. That's really all we get. There was no reference to any of the actual members of the Jedi. He didn't research anything. There's no real kind of reference to the Clone Wars in that moment. You know what I mean? I was expecting there to be a lot larger of a tie-in to the Clone Wars in episode 8, and it just wasn't there. And I don't even mean like specifically like a clone showing up or something like that, but there's no reference to that 3-year siege, or battle, or that confrontation between the two factions. Because in episode 7, we do get a lot of callbacks to the Galactic Civil War, as well as we get that one nod to the Clone Wars. But I don't know, man. I really hope that The Rise of Skywalker references, and I've said this in past episodes, another large issue I had with episodes 7 and 8, it's really an issue with 7 in retrospect, because initially I was fine with it, is that there's not really a main villain of episodes 7 and 8. And people claim like there's no antagonist in the prequels, but it's Darth Sidious is there the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, even though he's not Darth Sidious yet in episode 1 and episode 2, he does kind of show up a little more than he does in episode 1. But, you know, even though he's still Senator Palpatine in episode 1, and even though he's still Chancellor Palpatine in episode 2, you know, like, it's obvious he's the one pulling the strings. He's the ringleader. And like I said when we did our commentary for Phantom Menace, like, the song that plays, like the band that plays at the end of Phantom Menace is a major key version of Darth Sidious's theme, where he no matter who loses, I win. It's that type of thing. You know what I mean? So there was that main through line of episodes 1 through 6 that Darth Sidious is the main villain. You know what I mean? And in episode 7 and 8, especially 8, it's kind of like in episode 7 before Last Jedi came out, was just like, okay, well, Snoke is going to be the bad guy of these 3 movies, and maybe he'll tie into Darth Sidious somehow. Maybe he's maybe he's Darth Plagueis, or I don't know, who knows. But then in retrospect, I mean, he just gets punked halfway through The Last Jedi, and so it's like, okay, well then, who was the villain of episode 7 then? Was it Kylo? But then Kylo kind of gets his butt kicked, so it's like, you know what I mean? And so that's why I was glad that the episode 9 trailer had that cackle in it, that had that Palpatine laugh, showing in some way, shape, or form he is still involved with this kind of galactic struggle.
Well, I want you to expand on something for me. That what you just said about people saying that I've never heard this conversation before of the prequels not having a main antagonist, and I almost want to combat it. And I want you to expand on it for me, because I feel like in each prequel movie there is a clear antagonist. Episode 1, you have Darth Maul. Episode 2, you have Count Dooku / the Separatists. And episode 3, you have Sidious, Separatist, Grievous, villains.
Well, but Sidious is the villain of all 3, though.
Correct. But like, I feel like in terms of cinematography and actual like
oh, right, movie, like Maul was visualized as like the boss, like the end boss.
And then Attack of the Clones, you had Dooku, and so but like that's where I'm a little confused by that. Now, I agree with what you're saying as far as 7 and 8 not having a clear villain, especially 8, like you were saying. But I've never heard people say that there's no real antagonist in the prequels.
I mean, I don't think that, but I have seen people that think like, well, in episodes 4, 5, and 6, Darth Vader is the bad guy. You know what I mean? Well, until Return of the, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
though? Like,
right. Yeah.
Like, it was clear, like, he's evil, like he's Space Hitler until he's the good guy again. You know?
Yeah.
But I mean, I have seen people say like, well, there's no real villain or there's no main antagonist. And I've also heard that there's no main protagonist in the Phantom Menace, which I don't like. I think Qui-Gon Jinn is the main character of the Phantom Menace. And then it's about Obi-Wan taking over for Qui-Gon at the end.
Yeah.
Which you could argue it's about Anakin too, of course. But I think Anakin, it's not really Anakin's story until Attack of the Clones, I think. Yeah. Which other people have their own issues with. And that's a whole debate that you can have. But yeah, I don't know. I just like, do you know where I'm coming from though with episode 7? Because episode 7, initially I was fine with it. Because I was like, all right, well, Snoke's going to be the bad guy. And Kylo is going to be this era's Vader of sorts, not as badass, but of sorts. And then episode 8 happens, Snoke's gone, and now you're like, Kylo's the bad guy of episode 9. Like, Kylo's the head honcho, like he's the Darth Sidious of episode 9.
Yeah,
like that's what we're thinking. And so when I heard, okay, Darth Sidious. Okay, all right, we're back in business, so we're tying it all together. We're wrapping it all up.
I get what you're saying. I feel like the problem that's going to be with this trilogy is just a clear, like for adult viewers in particular, they're seeing what's going on behind the scenes in some capacity. Like as a kid, for the longest time, did not know that all 3 of the original trilogy were directed by a different person. I just didn't know that as a kid. And it's one of those, like, I know that now, and as an adult rewatching them, I'm like, okay, I can see the cinematic, like in between the directors, I can see the differences. But I feel like it's the most polarizing with the newest trilogy because JJ, with episode 7, was trying to make a Star Wars film for a new generation, but also call back to what, the height of Star Wars being the original trilogy. So that's why it has a very feel like that. Whereas Rian Johnson with episode 8 was trying to make a movie with its own story to continue on instead of hearkening back to the past. So now that you have
kill the past,
let the past die.
Let the past die. Kill it if you have to. Man.
Yeah, and then you have episode 9, which seems like it's bringing it back again full circle. And I wonder if we would be having this conversation if Colin, I don't remember his last name, the director from
Colin
Jurassic
Trevorrow.
World, if he didn't fall out and JJ had to come back in.
So I kind of have a theory that I kind of got from some other podcasts that I listened to, and I kind of expounded on it myself, that I think Colin Trevorrow likely had issues with figuring out the script having Carrie gone. That's kind of where because I'm pretty sure that's around when he fell out of the project.
I thought he fell out before that.
I don't remember. If she passed after he left, then never mind. I just don't remember. It's been chaos these past 5 years. So yeah, it's just like I don't want to be a Last Jedi hater. And like I said, when the movie first came out, I loved it. And it's one of those things, the more I think about it, the more I just think that there's a fundamental misunderstanding by Rian Johnson. In he just does. I don't even think he realizes the implications of what he did with that movie. Where yes, that is a standalone movie. Now, episodes 1 through 7, those are all standalone movies, but they tie in with everything else. They reference the past, they foreshadow the future. The Last Jedi, it's like just a cut and dry. Like they pinched it off on both ends, and then it's just, this is it. And then so it's like, I feel like it's almost like you could watch episode 7 and then go straight to episode 9 and kind of just be like, all right, I could put 2 and 2 together of what happened in between. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's just weird how he handled it, where there's just really no major nods to anything in prior lore. There's no kind of consequences for I don't know. It's just, like I said, the more I think about it, the more it kind of unravels for The Last Jedi. I think I just need episode 9 to be here. You know what I mean? And that way I can start trying to retroactively make sense of episode 8.
Yeah.
But while we're still on this kind of like cliffhanger of like, we don't know what the finale looks like yet, so we're kind of overly nitpicking episode 8, and you know what I mean?
So a little bit behind this, I did look this up. In 2015, Colin, how do you pronounce his last name? Trevorrow?
I think it's Colin Trevorrow, but you can say Trevorrow. I think it's one or the other.
In August 2015, he was announced as director of the film, and he had to write the script with Derek Connolly. In April 2017 is when Bob Iger said that they started pre-production, but they actually started filming in August of 2018. And then in August 2017, Jack Thorne was going to rewrite the script. And then on September 5th is when Trevorrow announced that he was leaving the production following creative differences. And then, of course, Carrie Fisher passed away in 2016. So that could be the reason. I mean, timeline kind of matches up a little bit. But it's one of those that when it was announced that he backed out, I wasn't upset. I liked Jurassic World, but I don't know if I would have pegged him to. I at the time, it made more sense to me for Rian Johnson to direct a Star Wars movie than Colin. Not disrespecting his work or anything like that, but as far as the magnitude of Star Wars, if I had to pick between the two, I'd be like, with Looper. Oh yeah, Rian Johnson, good candidate.
Okay, let me stop you there. I actually think the opposite. I think I would have rather had Colin Trevorrow do episode 8 and Rian Johnson do episode 9.
This was at the time. Now, so
even back then, I kind of was like hesitant about Rian Johnson. I was like, he does very visceral, thoughtful things, and Star Wars is very broad strokes. And so I think like with Jurassic World showed to me, okay, Colin Trevorrow can do big set pieces and he can do blockbuster, and Star Wars is blockbuster. As much as we want to dig into the lore, as much as you and I are going to get into, the themes and all the meaning behind everything and all the tiny little lore and the way the carvings are on Watto's chance cubes, you know what I mean? It still is broad strokes and it's blockbuster. And I feel like Colin Trevorrow might have been able to do that a little better. Whereas I feel like Rian Johnson tried to make The Last Jedi maybe too philosophical.
Yeah.
Like being the middle story. Like if you want to make the finale that thoughtful and that philosophical, then okay. I understand it because you're wrapping it all up.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of ground we needed to cover between episode 7 and episode 9, and we covered about a day in universe.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
And it feels like too a lot of what he did in episode 8 was like it said in the and that's what it bugs me, but it's also kind of those kind of moments when people are pointing out to the promotional material for The Last Jedi, and it's like, see guys, they warned you, stuff like, let the past die kill it if you have to. I feel like that's the biggest sin of The Last Jedi, is that although it was ambitious, like, hey, we're like, forget everything that happened in the past. We're focusing on now.
But if
That's
you're going to
cool
do
in
that, do
theory.
that with episode 7.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Cool
But it's
in
like we
theory,
have nowhere to go now, I feel like. I feel like JJ, I feel like they brought JJ in because they knew how much of an undertaking it was going to be. And that maybe Colin Trevorrow, like maybe they thought it was just going to be maybe a more simple plot originally for episode 9, where it's like, okay, we have the good guys, we have the bad guys, they show down, maybe there's some ties back to Vader, maybe there's some ties back to Sidious. And now I feel like it's this huge undertaking of there was so much ground that we didn't cover in the Last Jedi, because it, like I said, it happens over like a couple days in universe. And even though Empire Strikes Back moves fast, there's still, you would still assume it's probably maybe a week or two, maybe a couple weeks while Luke is on Dagobah. You know what I mean? And I just feel like it was just a very strange decision to me to cover such little ground in The Last Jedi and then have to wrap it all up in one movie that's going to be about the same runtime. You know what I mean? It's like so one movie is going to cover, because even Force Awakens, you would say it's probably a couple weeks, right? Because it starts on Jakku. She has to fly to Takodana. She runs into Han, then they fly to Takodana. That's got to be a couple days, right? And then they're probably in Takodana for a day, and then everything else happens, and you know what I mean? Like
everything else
it doesn't feel like it happens in a day. You know what I mean? Like it's probably a couple days. It's probably not a long time in between, but it doesn't feel like it happens all in one sitting. Like like in Last Jedi, I feel like the characters never even went to sleep. It feels like it all happened in one 16-hour span. Whereas Force Awakens, like you can kind of like subconsciously kind of imply to yourself, like, all right, well, Rey probably took a nap flying to Takodana. You know what I mean? So it's just strange to me. And so that's why it's really important to me that they pull in something from the prequels. Because obviously you have Leia still in I'm guessing a smaller capacity than what they originally, of course, a smaller capacity than they originally had anticipated, considering, Carrie had passed, but, Luke is still there in some way. So those are going to be, there are direct nods to the original trilogy, but the prequels, I mean, Darth Sidious might be the only attachment we have to the prequels. I mean, I'm hoping Hayden Christensen makes an appearance. We don't know if he is or not. There's rumors he was on a sound stage, but is it just his voice? I mean, he didn't grow his hair out. Did they put a bad wig on him? Who knows?
Well, I mean, Ewan was in episode 7 as a voice, so
right, which they originally had James Arnold Taylor, and then because they just figured they wouldn't be able to get Ewan, and then Ewan was like, oh, yeah, I could stop by, and then, so they like put it in, and they took James Arnold, because James Arnold Taylor, of course, being the basically the other Obi-Wan, he's like 95% of Ewan McGregor's voice in the Clone Wars, and in his brief cameo appearance in the episode, the first episode of Rebels. There has to be some kind of reference, and again, maybe we can get into the Batu thing as well here, and just do it and wrap that in with this episode. But I don't know. Like there has to be a reference to something about refer to like how the Empire wiped out the Geonosians. Or mention how like the Techno Union did something in the Clone Wars, or mention how the banking clan backed something, and that's what led to something in the Empire that led to something in the First Order. Just little things like that. I just hope there's little nods in The Rise of Skywalker that make those prequels feel like they matter, because I feel like Episode 7 and especially 8. It almost feels like those movies are telling you, don't worry about those other movies. You only need to watch these Disney ones, So I don't know. Do you want to get into this Batu thing? Because
let me finish with this. This is one, as far as this conversation. This is what I would hope. If we're going to get anything relating back to the Clone Wars of the Republic, this is kind of what I personally would hope. Rey's got all the Jedi texts. So if one thing I think that would be cool if they expanded on, it's pretty clear rewatching the movies, but even so, I feel like they could go into more detail about what was happening with the Jedi at the time of the Republic before Sidious took over. So what I'm like hypothesizing is maybe like Rey along this journey, she's like discovering more about who the Jedi were, and maybe around that time period, if Sidious is going to play a part in this, almost kind of like an adventure thing of like unraveling a mystery, like learning more about what it was like back in that time, and maybe how this came to be and that coming into place. If they did that alone, I feel like I would take that as a win in terms of nodding the prequels. Because I feel like the best thing that they can do as far as, things with like Clone Wars, even though of course it is canon, we could get more detail of that in like side stuff, like maybe continuing Disney shows. But that's personally what I would want. Like, I'm not saying something like an Indiana Jones style, like, oh, there's this like ancient mystery kind of thing, but that would be kind of cool personally.
Okay, so that's actually I like that idea a lot. That Rey has to kind of go back through the history of Star Wars to discover something.
Yeah, to discover
and like I said, I mentioned like it looks like there's a reason they're going back to the Death Star 2. There's a reason. So hopefully that I like that idea that she like maybe she has to go find something on Geonosis, or she has to go find something that someone left at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, or so. Well, I guess that was taken over by the Imperials, but what I mean? It's like something like that. I like that
go
idea.
into Jedi lore. Like
yes,
we have a little bit, but if they do that in like mainline movie, I think that would be awesome. Instead of just getting like side stuff.
Really like that idea. I'm totally down for that.
I'm good with them sometimes. Sometimes I just speak jargon, and sometimes I actually have good, reasonable ideas for these movies.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be upset if that doesn't happen now. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing that you even brought that up. But let's get into the Batu of it all, because either I'm totally wrong and it's just a total swing, like I'm swinging at the ball in the middle of the plate and the ball is above the catcher's head. You know what I mean? I don't know, but there's got to be a reason they do Batu for Galaxy's Edge. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
is it just because they're not doing a 1-to-1 replica of something that from the movies, and that way they can take some liberties with it? That might be why, but I would like to believe that they're gonna go to Batu. You know what I mean?
Well, here's the thing: is like what if that picture of Kerry Russell would have? It's probably not because it's snowy, but we don't. I mean, I guess we do know the climate, but yeah, you're right.
Well, don't forget in Alliances, Anakin basically nukes Batu. So,
True.
That's the other planet.
You're talking about the planet where the droid, where the droid factory.
Yeah, never mind. It's not Batu. It's the planet next to Batu. Never mind.
Yeah, it was like
I was gonna say maybe he just nuked the planet and it's just like a
that's the thing. Yeah, like what you're saying is there's so much other like many small planets or like little other things that they could have taken cues for to build this $1 billion theme park. Why was it a planet that was in Thrawn Alliances? Like, why that planet? There's something behind it, why they invested all this money to build a park from a place that in this book shows a connection between our current like Galactic Civil War and the what's the actual name for it? Not like the Clone War. There you go, Clone War. Sorry.
I was gonna say, are you talking about the Clone Wars?
Yeah, I was like the Clone Wars. Yeah, there's got to be a reason. I mean, it can't. I don't see how there's not. I mean, was Batu, has it been referenced anywhere else canonically apart from Alliances?
Not that I'm aware of. Because Black Spire it's referenced twice in the book because it's both timelines. They go there. Yeah. But I was even saying in a couple episodes ago, I think it might have been our first episode back from our hiatus, or maybe I said it to you off mic. I'm going to say it again in case I said it off mic, but and spoilers for Thrawn Alliances for anyone that hasn't read if you haven't read the two canon Thrawn books, please go read them. Oh my god, or listen to the audiobooks. Audiobooks are excellent as well. They're so freaking good. But so spoilers for Thrawn Alliances. Skip ahead maybe 30 seconds if you don't want to hear this. But in Thrawn Alliances, Vader finds out that the Chiss name for Force sensitive Chiss beings translates to Skywalker, and that's why Thrawn was so interested in Anakin in the Clone Wars timeline. And so I started, of course, my conspiracy theory brain started going, and I'm like, what if Anakin was from Batu originally? Because we know, he moved to Tatooine when he was about 3, I think. And so what if Shmi and Anakin were from Batu? And what if her last name was Skywalker because she in some way was related to, or the name passed down from, or some, maybe not literally like blood related, but like, some kind of connection to Chiss Skywalkers. You know what I mean? Like Chiss Force sensitives. It's also just too, it's like too, like, why set that up if you're not going to pay it off? And it could be paid off in Thrawn treason as well. Don't get me wrong. We'll find that out next month. But
it could also be, like, granted, I'm getting into biblical text here, but the whole thing with Mary and the virgin birth, like, as far as they say retrospectively in the Bible, it's one of those kinds of things. So maybe that was a situation with Shmi, in terms of, like, the Chiss. Did they make it clear if Chiss visited Batu often? Because I know they were in the Outer Rim. But, like,
I don't think they visited it often. I think they kept an eye on it, but I don't know if they actually visited.
What if it was one of those things that they were curious about her, like, carrying child, and one of those, maybe they knew, because the Chiss are force sensitive, aren't they?
Well, the Skywalkers are force sensitive because we're getting really into spoiler territory for Alliances. So I'm sorry, anyone listening that hasn't read Alliances yet. But the whole thing about this, and I don't remember what the Chiss, like, name for force sensitives were, but, like, again, I'm just going to call them Skywalkers because that's what it translates to. They lost their force connection once they got older, so that's why they had to use them as children for like navigators on their ships.
Yeah. But isn't it like an inherent, like, even if they're not force sensitive, like, they can use it, they're in tune with the force more than any other beings are?
That I'm not sure about. I don't know if there's just a kind of like a built-in force sensitivity with Chiss. I'm not sure. I know that they're just generally just more intelligent than other races.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you said. I think you did tell it to me off air. But I think that's valid. I think that probably is the answer, is that they were from Batu. Because, and
again, it could be wrapped up in Thrawn treason too. You don't know, because I do know that the Chiss ascendancy is coming back into play for Thrawn treason. And also, by the way, you might want to get caught up on Rebels, because it may butt heads Rebels with some stuff in Rebels. I don't know yet, but I'm assuming it's going to butt up with Rebels, because the start of Thrawn Alliances is right after the end of season 3 of Rebels. So,
well, they also talk about, like, with what happens, like the mystery that they unravel in Alliances, they tout it as being this gigantic deal as far as them moving. Was it the Grists? Were they the quote unquote antagonists? And
the Grists were the villains of the villains, like the antagonists of the present day, like the Galactic Civil War era timeline.
Yeah, so, like, they talk about how they
Grisk or Grists? Grisk,
I think.
Grisk. So.
Yeah, they tout, like, they're moving planets, like, they're visibly, like, they're basically, they may make it sound like what they're doing is this grand scale thing of, oh, this is super important, you should know about what they're doing. So, I mean, we're probably not going to get Grisk and Rise of Skywalker, but I mean, this is all got to be connected. I mean, they have a roadmap, like Marvel does, Star Wars does. If you believe it or not, you've got people that, like, their job is to focus on the continuity of this stuff. So something has to be connected.
Yeah, I am just really hoping that it ties together. And I don't know. I got some thoughts on what the main kind of story of Thrawn treason is gonna be, and let's talk about that just a minute. We'll end the show on that. So spoilers here on out for Thrawn Alliances if you didn't get spoiled enough. But yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about what I think Thrawn treason is going to be about, because it mentions in the synopsis, like, Thrawn has to choose between his alliance to the Empire and his loyalty to the Chiss, and yada yada yada. What I think is going to happen is, I think, because they really set up the Grisks in Alliances and how the Grisks kind of, like, left with their tail between their legs, I think the Grisks are going to attack the Chiss ascendancy, and Thrawn's he's gonna have that Jon Snow moment of like my father was killed, my brother needs me, I need to leave the Night's Watch, and Sam is like, you can't leave the Night's Watch, and that's a Game of Thrones reference. People that don't get that, that's like a season 2 reference, Game of Thrones, or it might have been even like episode 10 of season 1. I don't know. That's a long time ago, but I think it's gonna be one of those things where like Thrawn has to like decide, is he gonna go help the Chiss, or is he gonna stay and do whatever for the Empire. I really am hoping that the Grisk are the kind of new take on the Yuuzhan Vong, because they definitely seem similar to the Yuuzhan Vong from the old expanded universe. Hopefully, they don't go with the Force, kind of like they're not like they can't be attacked using the Force. Like hopefully they don't go that route. But they do seem like, as far as like they go and they just totally, they're like Thanos, where they just totally just like raise planets and things like that. So I don't know. I mean, what do you think? Do you think do you think I'm just totally off base? Do you think it's gonna be something unrelated to that? Because I do know it mentions how like his TIE Defender program got shut down in lieu of Krennic's Death Star program and all that. So
no, I mean,
where do you think treason's gonna go?
I mean, I think I think that sounds right. Like I just said, like they make in alliances what they're doing a big deal. So I would imagine, I think it would be cool if that's how it played out in some aspects of them being a crucial part in treason. Now, let me ask you a question offhand real quick. Did I see something that Eli was supposed to be in this book, or is that just total conjecture?
It's in the synopsis. It says that his old protege comes back and then tells him something.
Oh, he is with the Chiss Ascendancy. That's right.
Right. Yeah,
That's
he left to join the Ascendancy at the end of Thrawn 1. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know if Eli's going to come back and be in it. Hopefully, it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, he comes back and then he dies in the first chapter. I hate when stories do that. I hate it. Yeah. So hopefully Eli's around, because Eli, like, I love Eli in the first Thrawn book, and I was so bummed when he wasn't in the second one. Because he was that character where, like, at first I was like, he's kind of annoying. I don't really like the narrator's giving him kind of this weird, like, kind of hillbilly voice, and like I don't know how I feel about him. And then at the end of the book, I was like, Eli Vanto is my boy. Like I feel like I grew with Eli. I loved the first Thrawn book so good. Well, I do really love alliances as well. I came around on it. Not that I didn't like it the first time, but I just kind of needed that second go through for it. But the first Thrawn, it's paced so well.
It's one of those things in storytelling. Like, that's why Eli was so important. Is he, as the listener / reader, you're grounded with Eli. You're interested in what's going on with Thrawn, but you're using Eli as a vessel. And so it also, in terms of Thrawn we know is this calculated, just evil, quote unquote, of a person, but having him have a companion like Eli, a genuine, good-hearted person, it gives Thrawn more complexity. And that's why he's such an important character, in my opinion.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And that's kind of what I thought was a little weird to me the first time I went through Alliances, where the first time I went through it, it's like, okay, well, I know Anakin's the good guy, but I also know that he is going to be Darth Vader in about a year. And then in the present day, Eli's not there to balance out Vader just being like, I'm going to kill you if you don't shut up. So it's like, it was a little jarring, whereas like you really needed to kind of go on that journey with Thrawn in the first book to have him kind of be on it, like on his own for all intents and purposes in Alliances, because even though Anakin's there alongside him in one part of the story, and then he's with Vader in the other part of the story, it's never a companionship the way it was with Eli and Thrawn. You know what I mean? Like he has to work together with Anakin. He has to, like, he's forced to work together with Vader against kind of his wishes. You know what I mean? Whereas him and like Eli kind of resisted at first, but then eventually, like about halfway through the book, Eli's like, all right, no, I'm in it to win it with Thrawn at this point. You know what I mean?
And I feel like you could read into that in Alliances too, since if Thrawn doesn't have Eli to balance him out. I feel like if you're listening or reading, you can read into Thrawn having these internal debates of, is this right? Like, should he has this conflict, I feel like, and that could just be the whole thing with imagination and reading and or listening as you're reading into it. But that's what I like to think, is that he's having these internal conflicts because he doesn't have this person who's inherently good trying to balance out the scales as far as what is and is not the right thing to do.
And another important thing about Eli, which I noticed Thrawn Timothy Zahn is a genius for the way he wrote Thrawn in both the first and second book. The thing I noticed is that in the first Thrawn, even though he knows he's right, he keeps bouncing these ideas off of Eli, and he's like, "Hey, let me see if you can figure this out." And then Eli either does or doesn't, and then Thrawn's like, "Well, I don't blame you for not being able to figure it out," or "I'm impressed you figured it out." And in Alliances, like you see him trying to do that, like with
Vader.
Well, not even not with Vader. He wouldn't. He was like so scared to mess with Vader. He did it a couple times, but like Pharaoh, he would like bounce some ideas off Pharaoh and see if she knew what he was going for. And then like you would hear like an internal monologue of like her being like, "What is Thrawn doing?" And then Thrawn would be like, "Yeah, she doesn't get it." But so like you could tell like that's how Thrawn is. Like it's almost like he knows he's right, but he still is like almost second guessing himself. So he wants to see if someone else can figure it out, or like is he actually the smartest person in the room? And it's not even like a narcissistic thing, but like genuinely, like he needs to know if he's the smartest person in the room, so he knows that like if he can rely on people. You know what I mean? Like I just like the way Timothy Zahn wrote Thrawn, where he kind of has his own checks and balances with himself in any given situation. And I'm so excited for Treasons. I'm curious if Thrawn Treason's going to tie in at all, because probably not, but there might be some kind of nods to something. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say probably not as well. But you never know. Like this, I don't think Thrawn Treason is going to be a tie-in novel like we've had with several.
No, it's definitely going to, like, this Thrawn trilogy seems like a trilogy on its own that has things that can just potentially also be referenced.
Yeah. But as far as Rebels goes, if anyone knows access or has like an account with anything, I have the first season. I just don't have anything else. And I don't even think they're on Disney Now anymore. I don't even think season 4 is on there anymore.
On PlayStation View?
Oh no, just in general. Like I have the Disney Now app. I don't think that.
Like Disney
Rebels,
XD.
Yeah, well, their streaming service, their Now streaming service. But if anyone has access or has them stored anywhere, let me know, because I would love to watch Rebels, but I just don't have it and I can't afford to buy them.
Yeah, it's expensive. Talk to me off air about that.
Okay.
Because I thought we had it figured out, and then
we did. I just don't have access anymore.
No, I thought we figured something else out. Where I thought you were gonna send me something, and I was gonna send you back something. We'll talk about it off air. Let's wrap this up. So basically, I wanted to talk about how the prequels are going to tie in, and then we basically complained about The Last Jedi, and then talked about the Thrawn books. So let us know if you're listening to this, if you have any suggestions or any ideas. Maybe there's something we missed that might tie in with the prequels to Episode 9. I don't know. Also, last week, we said to send us pictures of anything merch or food and drink related from Galaxy's Edge if you go there. And then we forgot to tell you where to send it. So you can send that to, I believe it's hellotherepodcast@gmail.com. Is it Hello There Podcast or Hello There Pod or Hello There Podcast?
I think it's Hello There Pod on Twitter and Hello There Podcast @gmail.
Hello There Podcast @gmail.com. So send us pictures. You can email them to us is probably the easiest way, because I don't even know if I'm logged into the Twitter, to be honest. But yes, I really want to see this Rancor beer flight board. It looks like it's probably really cool, because I've only seen the illustration of it. So let us know. And again, if you have any suggestions for future episode topics, you can send that along as well. But until then, I was gonna try and think of something clever, and then I couldn't think of anything clever. You got anything you want to wrap up with, or are we just going to say till next time?
Hopefully we can get that Attack of the Clones scheduled sometime. We're trying to shoot for one a month leading up to Rise of Skywalker. So we did Phantom Menace at the end of May. So hopefully before the end of June, we can get out Attack of the Clones. But yeah, I'm hoping rewatching those is going to give us maybe a little bit more insight on what we could see in Rise of Skywalker. But at the same time, now I'm starting to get paralysis because I feel like I need to go rewatch Clone Wars again, just because
it might be important. The Blu-rays, because it's not on Netflix anymore.
That is true. So it's another hole I'm stuck in.
Yeah. I mean, I own seasons 1 through 5. I need to get
the lost episodes,
which it's like $20 on Amazon. It's just like, do I buy gas this week or do I buy Clone Wars? You know what I mean? So it's like,
exactly.
It's like I don't need it is the thing. Like I have a little bit of expendable money. I don't want to say I'm poor, but because that did come off like I can't afford food. But I'm saying like It's like, do I get this new game or do I get this one season of Clone Wars that's like 8 episodes long? So we'll see. Did I tell you I just started rewatching Avatar: The Last Airbender? Because I just picked that up on Blu-ray too.
You told me you picked it up. You didn't tell me you were watching it.
Oh, it's so good. I'm at the end of book 2. Did you watch it way back in the day?
Way back, I never finished it way back in the day. I think I was on like book 3 or something like that. Like
it's 3 seasons. So,
well, I got like it to the end of season 2, beginning of season 3. I'd never finished it.
Dude, it's so freaking good. Oh my god, it's so good. It was like $28 for the complete series on at Best Buy. If you can get it for that cheap, get it. It's so good. And there is a little bit of a Star Wars tie-in because Fire Lord Ozai is voiced by none other than Mark Hamill, which it's so weird. It's like it's cool because it's like Mark Hamill doing his like badass voice, and he's not in it a lot, but when he's in it, you're like, oh, like that's Mark Hamill being evil, and it's really cool. And it's just such a good quality show. Like I can't recommend it enough to anyone listening to this podcast because it's not Star Wars, but it's so clearly influenced by elements of Star Wars. Even though it's fantasy, it's not a sci-fi future, but just the storytelling. I mean, it's got such a clear hero's journey with Aang the Avatar, and it's just so good.
There's a lot of Star Wars parallels for sure.
So good. And there's even elements of this show that I think may have, I don't know if directly influenced it, but like there's parallels between like Avatar: The Last Airbender and like the Clone Wars, like the way that the stories are told, and it's just it's very good. I still got to watch Legend of Korra. I never watched.
I think Dave Filoni was. I think I read a thing the other day that Dave Filoni was part of in some aspect of the Last Airbender series. So I don't know. I haven't fact checked that, but.
Let's see. He was the director for a bunch of episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Okay, so there's a lot of Star Wars connections to Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's awesome. I like didn't even like I think I did know that, and then I think I forgot it, and then you saying it like that's cool. So okay, so then there are like direct parallels between Avatar: The Last Airbender and Clone Wars, and I'm glad that I wasn't just like making that up. So this show is so freaking good. Clone Wars is great as well, but like, and just the character development, like Sokka starts off as like such a punk and like a moron, and then like he eventually gets like when he pulls stuff off, you're like there's so many stupid moments where like it's a Nickelodeon cartoon essentially. Like it's a very good Western anime if you want to talk about it in like a classy way, but when you break it down, it's a Nickelodeon cartoon. And like there's just so many moments where like the character development makes me smile sometimes. We're like, yeah, Aang is this kind of innocent kid, and then he pulls off these crazy things sometimes, and you're like, oh, this kid is a badass too. So I don't know.
Also, fun fact: Dave Filoni is directing 2 episodes of The Mandalorian,
which that I believe I was aware of. I believe I was aware of at least one of the.
I knew his involvement. I didn't know in what capacity he would be in.
Shout out to Dave Filoni too. He's from Pennsylvania. He's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. But yeah, all right. I guess that's it's a Star Wars podcast, and now we're getting into, like I said, there's connections between The Last Airbender, not the movie, not the terrible Shyamalan movie, but the show, and Star Wars. So check it out. But yeah, that's gonna. Excuse me, I had pizza before this. That's why I've been kind of trying to suppress some things that you don't want to hear on a podcast. There it is again. Yeah, don't eat pizza right before you record a podcast. We went a lot longer than I thought, but it's all good. Yeah, we will catch you all next week. No idea what the topic's going to be, but we'll see you soon. May the Force be with you all.